Okay, so if you remember last time, we looked at these 4 tools up here. We looked at the Move tool, the Marquee tool, the Lasso tool, and the Magic Wand tool. Today we're going to have a look at layers and try and build our understanding of how they work. The first thing that you'll notice if we look at our layers palette is that one of them is selected, that dark blue-grey. Now, if you see the blue-grey, that means that that's the layer you're working on. So if you're trying to edit this layer, and this layer is selected, it's not going to work. The second thing you'll notice here is it's got the flower picture here as the background. It's got a little padlock. That means it's locked to the background, like it's the bottom layer. It won't move, and no matter what other layers we add. And actually, we probably don't want to keep it as the background layer because I might want to add another color behind it, which is what we're going to do later when we look at gradients. So I'm going to double click that. I can rename it anything I want. I could just click OK and have layer 0, but it's actually really good to label it the thing that it is, because when you get 20 or 30 layers and you're clicking between, you need to know what you're doing. The next thing I want to show you is how to rename a layer. You can see here, this is the file name from what I downloaded it, and if I double click on that, you can see it changes and becomes editable. So I'm going to call that Shadow People, so we know what it is. Okay, now the next thing you'll notice is, see this little figure in here? It's not in this one. Sometimes when you import particular files, I'm not sure why it does this in CX6, but it registers it as a different type of file even though it's a JPEG. Now what you can do is you can right click on that. If it works, I must not need it. Yeah, right click over here, so obviously not on the icon but over on the side here, and we're going to do something called rasterizing the layer. That turns it into an image, and you'll know you've done the right thing when the little symbol disappears. That means that that is now directly editable. The next thing I'm going to show you about layers are these little eyes. They allow you to turn things on and off. So the layer is still there, but it's just the visibility, this is the visibility icon, is turned off. Now it still looks like the same because the flower is on top, but if I turn that off too, we have the transparent background, and that's what the grey and white checkerboard means, that it's transparent, there's nothing there. So we'll turn them back on. Now what I'd like to do, I'm going to go to the Magic Wand. Remember that we can change our tolerance up here. The larger the number up here, the more pixels it will pick up. So I'm going to try and enlarge that a little bit more because I want to pick up most of this background. Now it's not obviously picking up the dark colours, and if I select on those it might select my shadow people, but I need to select in here, so I'm going to hold down Shift. If you remember, you can see the little plus sign coming up underneath the Magic Wand, and then in here. Okay, so that's going to do me fine enough for what I want to do now because I want to see the flower behind, so I'm going to delete that. Now remember, we want to get rid of the running ants, so we hit Command D. Okay, so it actually adds quite a nice little bit of texture behind us. What we want to do today is look at how layers work, especially how we can add elements of interest. So the next thing I want to do is I want to turn the shadow people off. I'm going to try and delete around these parts so we can add another layer behind. Now if you have a look here, I'm going to click, that means I'm selected here. I'm going to turn the shadow people off. Now I want to zoom in, so I'm command plussing, and I actually am going to bring up a new window for you to look at, and that's called your navigator. Now what that does is you can see the red square zooms in on what I'm doing, and here it allows me, let me just organize my workspace a bit better so I can see and you can see. It allows me to zoom right on in. So I'm going to click further down. We're going to go to our eraser tool now, which you should know what it is because we've labeled these all. And in here, I'm going to start erasing. Just really quickly, I'm not going to do a too flash job because it'll take too long. Really quick, I'm going to get rid of all of this. Okay. Yep. Now have a look at that. That's that layer there. Okay, now I want to go down to the other corner. I want to go over here actually first, and I'm going to get rid of that. Now if I want to do a straight line, it's not entirely straight, but I can click, hold down my Shift key, and click in and out until I get what I want, and it's quite a quick way if you've got fairly straight lines, or you're not too worried about how it's going to look, to delete that. So I'm going to get rid of all that border as well, and I can click up here, hold shift and click straight down, and those give me some cool little tools on how to do that. Now we'll get rid of the bottom corner here because I think we could see a bit of that. So I'm going to click all the way around. This is fairly straight, so I'm going to click in and down, and across, and get rid of all of this. Now I don't need to be too tidy about this if I know that my shadow people are going to be on top. So let's just click back to our shadow people, and we'll zoom out on our navigator button, and we'll see if that covers it. Yeah, I can still see a bit in here, so I'm going to get rid of that. So off go the shadow people, zoom in, and I'm going to go pretty quick on here, guys. Get rid of this. Whee, it's not going to be tidy. If you were doing this for a piece, you'd do it much more tidily. Alright, so now shadow people back on. Yep, I can see those checkerboards behind. Now we're going to add another layer. So I'm going to pull my layers palette over. If I want to add a new layer, remember when we labeled it, we found out where that was. We just click on this. Now as you'll see, it's not in the right place. I want it behind the flower. So I click and I hold my click and I drag it down, and that's how we reorder the layers. So if it was up here and I filled it, if I find my toolbar again, I'm going to use the fill tool, and remember here's where I change colors, so I'm going to change it to a green. Let's have a green. If I fill it, it's obviously going to block the flower, isn't it? It also shows you where I haven't been able to delete this stuff. So you can see that that is not in the right place, so I can click and drag it down, and now you can see different layers going on. So for our next trick, we are going to, so I'm going to rename this too, I'm going to go background. We're going to have a look at how we alter some of these to create different hues, saturation, and also adding gradients and different texture.